If you're not focused, you will spread your resources on everything and miss the best thing. You will be busy but not accomplishing what you want and what you're called to do.
Hello, this is Lorraine, and welcome to Healthy Living, Spirit, Soul, and Body. So today we're going to be talking about necessary endings. And I read a book a couple months ago by Henry Cloud. He also wrote the book on boundaries. And he has a lot of really good insights about endings and boundaries and what we can do to keep ourselves going in the right direction, and how we can keep ourselves in a safe place so that we're thriving, so that we're growing, right? Because I've come to realize in this life that God has plans for each one of us, but it's our responsibility to fulfill that plan. And really, we're given stewardship, in a sense, over the plan that God's given us and God's put in our hearts. It's our responsibility to nurture that dream and make it grow and feed it. And, just like a seed, when you have a seed in the ground, you need to take care of it. You need to water it. You need to take the weeds out, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. Why it's necessary to let certain things die, okay? Because like I said, we're stewards of the plan that God gave us, and it is our responsibility to see it through. So here we go. So as I said, some endings are necessary. If you're going to go forward in the plan that God has for you, there's certain things that you're going to have to let go of, right? A couple of years ago, I was listening to Keith Moore, and he was talking about a man who was in his office for counseling, and the man was saying how depressed he was, and they started delving deeper into his life, and Keith Moore realized that the reason why he was depressed was because he never went after the plan that God had for him. Years ago, before he got married, he felt like God was calling him to be a missionary. But he got married and his wife did not want to do that. So because rather than honor God, he honored his wife. And there might be a lot of controversy there, I'm just saying, but really, he was wrong. He needed to honor God and pray that his wife would either come to her senses or that God would change her mind. But he needed to follow God. That he needed to be a steward over that call that God had on his life. And in the same way, we need to see that the plan that God gives us is a holy thing. It is something to be fought for. It is our life. It is the purpose that we're on this earth. If God has put you on the earth for a purpose, then there are people living today waiting for you to complete that purpose, okay? So I'm going to talk about two different things that kind of hinder us from going forward. One of the things he said is God is always calling us to a better place, inviting us to leave some things behind us, okay? And that's true. He wants us to grow. He doesn't want us to stay in a comfort zone. He doesn't want us to stagnate, right? And, we're all given stewardship of the dream God's put in our hearts. If you've allowed, and so one of the scenarios that we have to guard against is when we have toxic people in our lives, or people in our lives that aren't part of the plan, okay? And a lot of times, we're letting people continue in our lives when it's necessary to let them go. The time has come for those people to be, separated from our lives. And trust me, I know it's not an easy thing to do, but and you might say, well, Lorraine, I really can't let that person out of my life because I would feel bad. They depend on me. I'm important. I'm too important to them. They would never survive without me. So, really, if you really love them, you would break off the relationship because their dependence on you is not healthy. And if you love them, you would want them to grow and be strong and be a healthy individual. And that will never happen if they're, attached to you. And that's important for you to realize if you're in that kind of relationship, that's a necessary ending. And another kind of necessary ending that happens in our lives is when we're just too busy, okay? And how often is that? A lot of times the endings are things that we need to stop doing that are distracting us from going forward to what our dream is and what our purpose is.
And he says, God may be calling you to something where he wants you to go deeper and richer, and you can't do that unless you're pruned, unless you let go of some things. And being busy a lot of times is almost a badge of honor. Look, I'm so busy. That means you're being productive, but if you're not being productive about the right things, then that's not really good. There need to be some necessary endings in that situation, because you cannot give all your energy to all these different things. If you give your energy to all these little things, you're going to miss out on the one thing that you need to really be focusing on. And do you see that? So that's why it's important to have necessary endings in that situation, where you need to let go of some things that you're busy with and that are taking up your time, but they're not really the right thing that you need to be focusing on. And God is into pruning. He says that, any branch that's not bearing fruit, he's going to purge it. And in the same way, all these different things that you're busy with, they're not really bearing fruit because they're not going towards what he would have you to do. And so how important is that, right? So we just need to get a little wiser and need to realize that certain things, there's a time to live and there's a time to die. There's a certain time to prune and there's a time to uproot and there's a time to plant. So there's a season, a lot of times, especially if God wants you to go forward, that you need to let go of some things. Because if you're not focused, you will spread your resources on everything and miss the best thing or the main thing. You will be busy but not accomplishing what you want and what you're called to do. And I'm going to read that again. If you're not focused, you will spread your resources on everything and miss the best thing. You will be busy but not accomplishing what you want and what you're called to do. And our whole life is really, as I mentioned earlier, we are stewards of what God has called us to do. In our whole life, our purpose needs to be the main thing. And that's what we need to be focusing all our resources on, rather than getting ourselves spread out too thin on all these other different things. There needs to be some necessary endings. God is always trying to prune our lives. To go forward involves letting go of some stuff. Sometimes the season is ending, okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there, the importance of those two different types of endings. And as I mentioned, the most important thing is that you steward the gift that God has given you. You steward the call on your life, and you get rid of some things that may be distracting you from the main thing and the best thing. Maybe you know some people in your life that are just too busy and they're getting totally wiped, they're totally burnt out. Maybe you need to share this with them so they can see that there needs to be some necessary endings so that they can focus themselves on the right thing and the best thing. Okay? So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up and subscribe and like. And if you're interested, please look me up on my Facebook page, Lorraine Strazza White. Strazza spelled S as in Sam, T-R-A-Z-Z-A. And look me up. I am going to be having a Facebook Live study group on Increase God's Way. it should be really good. I'm real excited about it. I'm studying and I'm getting some ideas about how to present the book. This is based on Jerry Savelle's book called Increase God's Way. Okay? So look me up, friend me, and I would love to have you part of the study group. So have an absolutely wonderful week. The weather is absolutely gorgeous here in New Jersey, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.